What's up, guys? This is Pedro from My Stuttering Life, where you will hear the good, the bad, the very ugly. We're gonna laugh, we're gonna cry, but through it all, just know that you are not alone. So, let's get started. Welcome, Greg Pakes.
Thank you very much for having me.
Welcome, sir. This is a huge honor. We have a lot of topics to cover, so let's get started. So, do you remember when you first began to stutter?
Not a specific event. I think they call it a developmental stutterer. So kind of came along toddler kind of age, about 3, I think my mum tells me, and it's just always been there. It's always been there from day one. It's the transition of my stutter definitely has changed with age. As a child, it was much worse, and I've managed to get it under control to a certain extent as I've got older. But no, there isn't a specific event that I remember that I kind of think, oh, that's new. No, it's always been there.
Does it run in your family? Are there many other family members who stutter?
Yeah, so my dad still stutters to this day. He's largely got it under control as well. I've never really spoken to him too much about his experience with it, if I'm honest. But he definitely has one. And also my mum tells me that she has one, although hers I think came a little bit older. I don't think it was a classic developmental stutter, I think. But she doesn't stutter at all now. I don't know quite what happened there. It just passed. I'm the youngest of 3. My middle sister, she used to stutter as a toddler, but largely grew out of it. She still has a really minor, very, very minor, you wouldn't really call it stuttering, I don't think. I don't think she would consider it debilitating in any way either. So it seems like the girls in my family grow out of it, and the boys maybe not so much, which actually goes with the science. It's a ratio of 4 to 1, I believe, from boys to girls.
Oh, sorry. I got all choked up. You make a great point. My mom had a stutter, and it was a moderate one. However, at the age of 14, she had just told herself that she's all done. I mean,
Wow.
she had it. And so I don't know if it's girl power, the power of the mind, or that ratio, but for her, it's all gone.
It's
It's all gone.
interesting. It's amazing, isn't it?
Right. So I wonder, because, I mean, you know, there are nights when, I just ponder, because mine came on as a result of a dog attack when I was 5 years old. I was walking home from school, and this huge German Shepherd, looked at me, and, I looked at it, which you should never do, but I'm 5 years old. I mean, how did I know?
Yeah.
So when I kept on walking, the dog was chasing after me. And then, as you know, I ran home. And then the dog jumped on me, bit my leg, and then my head hit the concrete sidewalk. So, after that, I couldn't talk, Greg. Zero speech, zero. And then when I began to speak, I had a severe stutter. I mean, nothing would ever come out. And so, over the years, I had speech therapy.
Mm-hmm.
Now I ponder, what if I hadn't had that dog attack?
Yeah.
would I still have acquired it inherited from my mom? So I mean, it's just, I mean, it's head scratchers all the way around. So I don't know. I
I
still
think,
have mine.
yeah, I mean, do you know if yours, was caused by the stress of the dog attack, or the actual blunt force trauma of hitting your head?
What I was told is that it was a combination of the shock trauma and the head injury,
Hmm.
and but I always wonder, what if I hadn't walked home?
Yeah.
What if my parents had picked me up? Would I have acquired it a different way? I mean, I don't know, but
I, th- mm,
it's just interesting.
I think what I'm learning is there's a big spectrum. The speech system is super complicated. I'm by no means an expert in any way, shape, or form. This is just armchair stuff that I've been reading. But it's super complicated, and it's kind of about 6 or 7 different systems, all timing very intricately and things. And there's so many ways for it to go wrong, and it's not the same for anybody. It's different for every person. And my view is that you're kind of on a spectrum. You have a propensity to stutter, and it might come. Your brain might compensate for it. You might generate new neural pathways that compensate for whatever issue you particularly have, but everyone's just completely different, and everyone's situation is completely different, and it can happen in so many ways. And actually, a lot of the treatments for preschoolers is all about it's a lot of it's environmental. It's about reducing that stress, and they have success, which as a stutterer for me is very encouraging, number one, but very strange to hear that, oh, you do have success. You like that's to me, that's just incredible. It doesn't work for everyone, but it can for others. And speech therapy itself is proven time and time again to really increase fluency. So whilst there is no cure, I think there's always a little bit of hope.
Yes, while we are talking about speech therapy, had you had it in school for how long, and was it beneficial?
So my journey with speech therapy is checkered, to say the least. It's my parents were in the British Foreign Office, so we moved country a lot. So before the age of 10, I lived in kind of Egypt and Ghana in West Africa, and as you can imagine, the speech therapy in those countries in 1990-ish is non-existent. So I eventually came back to school in England, and I did go to speech therapy. I was dragged to speech therapy age 10, and it really is not something that I was willing to accept, admit, whatever. And I was just awful, I think. It's actually one of my earliest, most vivid memories because it's just so traumatic. When I knew the class was coming up, I would go and hide in the house. I would not get in the car. I'd be physically dragged into the car. I'd be screaming. When I got there, I wouldn't get out of the car. When I eventually got into the speech therapist's office, arms crossed, not saying a word, refusing to contribute, refusing to participate, just would not play ball in any way, shape, or form. And I think that crushed my mum in particular. I have a 3-year-old daughter now who's just started stuttering, and the idea that she refuses help is just devastating to me. Like, that's just like, wow. And so the fact I did that to my mum and my dad is quite a thing that I've recently realized. So that was very, very unsuccessful. My mum told me recently that the speech therapists just basically washed their hands of me. I mean, I don't blame them. I'm not sitting here blaming them. I mean, what can you do with an uncooperative 10-year-old? And so I really just kind of gave up on that. And I think for me, a lot of it was you get there age 10 and you're basically told there's no cure. I wanted like, oh, take this tablet, you'll be fine. And to hear that, it was just not what I wanted to hear at all. And then to be given techniques, which I incorporated some of them, but for me in my head, and this is just my view, I mean, everyone's got their own journey here, but for me, I was replacing one awkward situation with another. I mean, it just, tapping my leg, for example, was a way to create a rhythm to help. And I used to do that with my hand in my pocket, sometimes, tap my leg, and it had some success, but I just felt like I was replacing one tick with another, and it was just crushing, to be honest, just to be told that there was no cure. So then kind of fast forward at university age, so I would have been 20 maybe, I took myself to speech therapy, and again it was much the same story. Really, although I took myself, I really wasn't prepared. I wasn't ready internally to kind of admit that. I remember they did an exercise, I presume it's like a desensitization exercise, where they, back in those days, if you wanted to know the time that a train was to leave the station, you used to have to telephone a number and ask, hey, what time's the train at this station going to here, blah, blah, and then an operator would tell you. And one of the exercises they made us do in a group was telephoning in front of everybody, and the first thing you say is, hi, I'm Greg, or whatever your name is, and I have a stutter, please bear with me, and I will da da da. And everyone did it, and I refused. I sat in the group and I said, no, I'm not doing it. Nope, absolutely not. So in my head, it's like I wasn't ready. And to be honest with you, I still think I'll struggle with that now. I'm very fortunate. As you can probably hear, my stutters, I've got it kind of under control, which has got easier the older I've got. I've got 150 techniques that I use that I think are relatively successful, but I'm really not one to announce, hey, I've got a stutter, please bear with me. On the one hand, partly because it's not bad enough that I have to do that right now. As a child, I definitely should have done that. It was significantly worse. So I consider myself very, very lucky. Just keeping on the speech therapy, as I said earlier, my daughter is 3 and she's just developed a stutter, and we're embarking on speech therapy for her now. We're in Australia, so they have a program here called the Lidcombe Program, which I don't know if you are familiar, but no. So it's actually, there's 2 types of programs for preschoolers. There's kind of, well, there's indirect treatments and there's direct treatments. The indirect treatments is like a holistic view of the environment at home, and there's several models that are very popular in the States. One's called demands and capacities, but in Australia they've got a system called the Lidcombe Program, which is actually direct. The purpose of the Lidcombe Program is to cure stuttering in a preschooler, which it has a very big growing body of evidence-based clinical trials which show it's successful in children under 6. I think because the brain is still so it's so plastic at that age that you can treat, and it doesn't always work, but I think off the top of my head, you have a 7.5 times more likelihood of getting to basic fluency if you go through the Lidcombe program than if you do not, which is, it's a difficult one because a lot of children develop stutters between the age of 3 and 5. 80% of them grow out of it. So if you treat that, how do you know if they would grow out of it anyway, or if the treatment worked? So they've done trials with control groups and things, and it does show that it works, but again, everyone's brain's different. It doesn't work for everyone, but so we're about to start that with my daughter.
Well, you had speech therapy in the 1990s. I had it in the 1970s. So a little bit older, Greg, not that much, but during that time period, the goal was they wanted to get me like everybody else, which
Mhm.
basically had told me that I'm broken, I'm damaged.
Mhm.
There is something wrong with Pedro, so he's in speech therapy because their job is to get him to talk like everybody else. And so we had these old style, tape recorders. We had some form of note card that had a magnetic strip, and they had me talking to this machine, and then it would repeat it back, and just like, how's this going to help me? I'm just hearing how horrible I am, week after week after week. And so
Mhm.
I wish, back then, well, like what you were telling me, the armchair, quarterback, hindsight 2020. I wish I had then what is going on right now, because um, there is still more research, going on, and there's more of the AI aspect of it, you know, which which I think is great, and then also tackling the mental health aspect. I I I I didn't have that growing
Mhm.
up, Greg. I mean, I didn't know how to handle the bullies. I didn't know how to handle depression. I didn't know how to handle all of that. All that I was being, quote unquote, taught is how to talk like everybody else.
Mhm.
And I mean, year after year after year, uh, you know, it was rough. It was rough.
Yeah, I can I can relate.
So, tell me, how was your school experience with having a stutter?
Um, it's a hard one. I've had to like really think about this. I don't think I've repressed memories, but in the last few weeks, I've thought about these questions fairly deeply, and I think there is a chance that I kind of have, because I'm digging back through things that I've really quite forgotten about. And maybe it is just forgetting. Maybe that's what it is. But school was um, definitely hard. I mean, it's a battle every day. You wake up and you have a gremlin on your shoulder, and he's there, and he's just everything you try and do. It's just, oh, this again. Right. Okay. Here we go. I think I was lucky. I think I had really good schools. I think I had really good teachers. It was still quite early in the understanding, so I think a lot of my teachers hadn't really encountered anybody who stuttered before, which seems odd to me given it's 1% of the population. I mean, that does seem weird to me, um, but I think I was lucky with my teachers. They were very understanding. But I mean, to be honest with you, if you have a teacher that's not understanding, they need to reevaluate their career choice, in my opinion. Um, I came up with tactics. I mean, much like, I mean, I've heard yours where you used to skip the first 2 days of school for many years. I
Yes, sir.
never thought of that. I never thought of that, which was I'm a bit jealous of. But I used to run. So if I had a new teacher with a new class, or like at the beginning of a year or something like that, I used to run to the class, get there first, like barge in. Like I didn't care if they weren't letting me in. I'd barge in and I'd get them one-on-one, and I'd say, hey, just like, so this is thing, like, and I think I was quite assertive. I think I was like, don't ask me to speak up. And I actually think as an adult I understand why that worked, because I'm putting that on the back foot. They're like, oh god, I can't, okay, all right, yeah, okay. And so that used to happen with a lot of things. In England, a mandatory subject is French, so obviously, well, at my school it was, and obviously doing French orals and things were just a disaster. And there's a lot of reading aloud and stuff. And I just made it very clear. And generally speaking, I got through it, but there was a lot of living in fear. Like if I knew something was coming up, it was for days before, it was like, oh God, how am I gonna deal with this? I used to try things which now in hindsight I realize are just pointless. I used to think that if I lost my voice, as in not completely, but kind of talked in like a hoarse voice, that would help. So I used to scream into my pillow to try and lose my voice. I don't think it would have worked. I know, like, but that's kind of one thing I used to do. It wasn't great, but I think I had it easy. I think the later, I think the older you are, probably the worse it was. I think that's just a fact. There's much more understanding now. There's much more people are familiar. I mean, it's by no means easy, but I would imagine it's certainly easier than it used to be.
You talk about tips. Many people call them, well, I mean, ticks, but, many call them, that is a crutch, a trick, or whatnot. But from my point of view, it was called survival,
Mm-hmm.
Greg. I had to survive, and how I did it, you know, I would do accents. I'm not going to
Mm-hmm.
insult because I did a lot of accents to help me get over the hump. And
Mm-hmm.
for a couple of years, Greg, I whispered. That's all I did. I whispered for a couple of years. And so I would tell everybody that I lost my voice.
Mm-hmm.
I'm not stuttering at all when I
Mm-hmm.
whisper. So I did that for years. And, after, people caught on, I had to do another thing. And then, I mean, like what you had, told me previously, you just replace one with, an, with, another, tip or tick, you know, or, whatnot. And I mean, when, is it ever going to stop? And tapping my head. Oh, good Lord, Greg. I mean, when I have a block, I tap my leg, my head,
Mm-hmm.
I tap everything to help me rhythmically to help me get out the block. So, I
Yeah.
mean, yeah, I have a lot of tools in my toolbox, and
Mm-hmm.
people tell me that I shouldn't use them, but it's called survival.
Are your tools subconscious, or are you thinking about them? Are you thinking, right, I'm going to use this tool now, I'm going to use that tool now?
I think about it because I have so many. I
Mm-hmm.
just pick one that will fit the situation. Like, Post-its. Post-its were my BFF. If I knew that, I was, going to have a hard time, I would have Post-its in my back pocket with a pen. And so
Mm-hmm.
let me tell you, Greg, here's what you don't do. When you're at a bank and you need to cash a check, here I thought, okay, so this is going to help me to accomplish what I need to get done. So I wrote on a post-it that, I'm here to just cash a check. So in my head, everything's going to be all right. However, I'm at a bank. And so I'm in the lobby area, and I mean I'm doing fantastic because I have my post-it. There's not going to be any issues whatsoever. And so when I walk up to the teller and hand her the note, her eyes get all big. And of course she hits the panic button, which I don't know about. And two guards are behind me. So I'm thinking,
Oh dear.
yeah, hey, what's up? And so I am taken into the bank manager's office. And so I'm thinking, they think I'm here to rob the bank. And, mind you, the whole time she never opened the post-it.
Right.
She just assumed I'm here to rob the bank. And so thankfully it was all worked out.
Yeah, that's pretty much nightmare scenario, isn't it?
Yes. So that one I put on the burner. And then I went with my accents,
Hmm.
So, I mean, we have to do what we have to do in order to get done what we need to be done. And
Hmm.
I mean, Greg, I don't have to tell you, but we work 100 times harder than everybody else to even, accomplish the simplest of tasks. We have
Yeah,
to work 100 times harder, and you know, and people don't know that. They don't
yeah,
know.
agree. And I know I've got it easier than a lot of people, but every single day when I go and order my coffee, it's on my mind. It's I'll order my coffee and then I know they'll say, can I have a name? And I know I have to say my name. I usually give my name. I have in the past given a different name, but I usually give my name. And even though I'm very I'm good at it now, and I know I'm good at it now, and I know the chances of me stumbling over that are very low. It's there. Like the gremlin's a lot smaller now, but he's still there. And I think about it. There's multiple times per day, constantly. It's there. And like as I've said numerous times, I'm very fortunate. I know I am, and I understand that people have it a lot worse than I do. And yeah, I've been there as a child. I've been there, and it's I know it's very, very draining.
Um, my, coffee experiences, I always give a different name. And so when I do, I go back to my table, I hop on my telephone, and when they, call out that name, paying attention because I'm Pedro. I'm not Harold. I'm not Paco. I'm not Raymond. It's like, no. It's like, oh, you. Yeah, you were here. Okay, I'm sorry. Yeah. So yeah, it's
Yeah.
called survival.
Names is a very interesting one, because I think a lot of people who stutter kind of wish they were called something else, but I don't think it would help. I think it's largely mental, and you struggle on your name regardless of what your name is. And so I used to it's one of those things I kind of realized with age. I used to think, oh, I wish I was called this, and then I was like, well, it wouldn't make any difference. I mean, even on the phone now, saying my surname is difficult. It begins with a P, which is a bit tricky for me. And so I use tactics. I will military alphabet it. I'll go Papa Alpha Kilo Echo Sierra, because I can say that for some reason, but to actually say my actual name is hard.
My name has two P's, so it's doubly hard. And so what I did is I practice in front of my bathroom mirror. We're talking for days, Greg, for months, Greg, for years, Greg. I I had just practiced my name until, now it rolls off. Or, if I'm having a rough day, I will use a bumper word. Hey,
Yeah,
hey, I'm Pedro Peña. Hi, I'm
yeah,
Pedro Peña.
yeah,
Yes.
yeah. Do you find practice has worked for you in the past?
Oh, it does, because I am building muscle memory, and when I
Hmm.
have to pull on it, it comes. It comes.
Yeah, my experience with practice is different. I maybe I didn't practice enough. That's possibly one thing. But for me, I think my stutter is very related to stress or anxiety or something like that. So an interview or something would be at its worst. Uh, um, and that anxiety and stress has got much less with age. I'm a lot more confident now as a person. So things that used to terrify me no longer really do. But I would find that practice for me didn't do anything, because the stress of the situation would just blow everything out of the water. Like I was either going to be able to say it or I wasn't. And maybe I didn't practice it enough, maybe, but that was my kind of experience of that.
Um, Back in my last year of high school, I was pulled into the drama club. So, you know, this bunch of kids were like, Pedro, you can do anything. We got you. We got you. If you need help, we're here. And so, that's when I got into acting. And Greg,
Wow.
let me tell you, Greg, when I rehearsed all my lines on the night of the plays, I wasn't Pedro. I was that character. And when I physically walked on stage, I wasn't Pedro. I was that character. And guess what? That character did not stutter. And so therefore I did not. And to see the people in the audience, their eyes open and their mouths open, because it's a high school and they know that I can't say my name. I can't, and here they are. How is he doing this? But the moment I walked off that stage, Greg, I was Pedro. And what does Pedro do, Greg? He stutters. And so
Yeah.
it is a
Wow.
head scratcher.
That is completely opposite to my experience. Drama acting is basically my worst nightmare. They used to, at school, they used to try and make me do like one-liners in the school play and things, and I did a couple, but it was traumatic. I'd get through it, but it was, acting is, I know where my skills lie, and acting is not one of them. It was awful, and I don't know. Obviously that's the school trying to help. I understand that, but my view as an adult is leave it to the professionals. The school shouldn't be dictating that kind of thing. Teachers shouldn't be dictating that kind of thing. You don't know what you're doing. If a person in a wheelchair comes in, as the teacher, you're not like, right, let's get you walking. No, like, you don't know what you're doing. You're a teacher. You're not a speech language pathologist. So that's kind of my view on that. You can probably, I'm a little bit bitter about that, but I remember at one of my schools, we used to have to go to chapel every day, and and on a weekend, on a Sunday, the parents could come as well. And the headmaster at the time, he was trying to help me, but there was people in the school took it in turns to kind of read aloud prayers or whatever it was, and there was always one bit, one line which I had in like the final 2 years, which was I used to have to say, and now a moment of quiet for our own private prayers. And I don't think it helped me, and I think it just caused me stress. I really don't. And I know people have the opposite view. I know people are kind of like, no, you've got to get out there, you've got to practice, you've got to put yourself in those positions. And I respect that, but I do think everyone's journey is different. And as you've heard from my speech therapy, I really wasn't mentally ready to face up to it, really. I was just battling through on a day-to-day basis. And so, yeah, I don't feel like that helped me much.
One of my previous guests, who is writing a book, he made a great point. You shouldn't push kids who don't want it, but who are not ready. You should not push them, because the outcomes aren't what you are going to expect. So, you have a valid, point there. Do it if you feel like it will help you, then by all means. If you don't want to do it, you should not be forced. So yeah.
And I think looking at the treatments available for preschoolers, excuse me, a lot of them are around environmental. They are around decreasing stress. They are around and so although these might seem to some people kind of really wishy-washy things that you do, but it's absolutely shown that the environment that you're in and the the kind of speaking environment that's created for you at home, at school, really impacts. I mean, it really does. There's a lot of crossover between the demands and capacities treatment model and the Lidcombe, and there's a lot of crossover, and a lot of it is like one-on-one time with your children, like decreasing the demands of speech, closing off questions. You don't ask kind of, how was your day? You ask like, did you have rice for lunch? Yes, no, kind of thing. It's very closed. The brain's not having to work too much. And so I think, so just kind of going back to what you said, the idea of a teacher pushing a child to do something they're not comfortable with, I don't see that as a positive thing at all. But I just want to echo again, I'm no expert in this. I'm just a parent who's trying to work it out.
Well, speaking of being a parent, I know you had just touched on this briefly, but what advice would you give to parents and teachers with regards to children who stutter?
From a parent's perspective, I've got two angles. I've got one as the child, and as I've said before, as a child, I wasn't ready to face up to this. So I think you just really need to be sensitive to that child's needs and wants and things. And like, for my parents, I really pushed them into a corner, to be honest with you. Like, I didn't give them much option, which is my fault. And as an adult, I can see that, but as a child, I can't. I don't know how they could have done any better, if I'm honest. But then as a parent, I think the big thing is to seek professional guidance. That's, for me, that's just where it has to be. Like I say, there are treatments for preschoolers that are effective. They're not always effective, but they are effective. And I think it's about seeking a professional. And there's lots out there. There are some that are better than others. And I think if you're not happy with one, go for a different one. And it kind of feels like the clock's ticking, to be honest, with this research. Like, once they get to the age of 6, those treatments kind of stop working. And they've shown that repeatedly in lots of trials and clinical trials and things. And so you do have that. And I listened to a different podcast where I kind of hesitate to say this, to be honest, because I'm not sure people will like this view, but they were saying that it's perfectly valid, like as a parent, to choose if your child is, that you're not going to treat it. That's fine. That's perfectly valid. And if you are going to treat it, then that's also fine. That's perfectly valid. I don't subscribe to that. I think, like, obviously having a stutter is perfectly valid. You are just as worthwhile as the next person. I get that. But whilst there is a chance for treatment, in my view, it should be taken. And obviously you play that day by day. If the child's responding badly, maybe you give up. Maybe you do accept. But whilst there is evidence to show that it can be treated, I think, having gone through a life as a stutterer myself, I don't wish that on anybody, and certainly not my own child. I'm obviously biased with that, but my daughter started stuttering about 2 months ago, and it was a big blow to me. It really, I'm very emotionally attached to that, and I need to disconnect from that because it's not good. But yeah, I don't want this for her, and I can see that might be unpopular to people that are older and have a worse stutter than I do, and they have to accept it and they have to love it and they have to live with it, and that's great. Like, more strength to you. That's fantastic. But whilst she's under the age of 6 and there is a chance, I'm going to take that chance with 2 hands. And I think, going on to teachers, I think it's what we said previously. It's have compassion. It's not a teacher's position, in my view, to get involved in speech therapy, and it's just about understanding. If I had one incident at school where I don't know if you have them in the US, but we used to have gap students. So this is kind of it's like maybe like an 18, 19-year-old teacher who would come in on their year off between university and school and kind of help out around the school, cover some classes, do some sports and things like that. So we were in English class, and this gap student was taking the class. So he would have been 18, 19 years old. And we were reading a paragraph each around the class. And I didn't know he was going to take the class, so I didn't get to run to the class beforehand to tell him that, hey, don't ask me. So I'm sitting there going, oh God, here it goes. And like I'm looking ahead to like my paragraph, right? Okay, oh God. And it gets to me and I say, oh, actually, they don't ask me to read in class. And like that's embarrassing in itself to have to say that in front of everybody, but that's what I did. And he said, no, you are going to read. And I was like, well, I don't normally have to read. Like the normal teacher doesn't make me read. And this guy was like, no, you are going to read. I think in his head he's thinking, no, it's good for you. You need to face your fear. Like, so anyway, I start and it's dreadful. I mean, it's every word taking ages, and then after about 5 words, he goes, okay, stop. I'm sorry. Like, move on. And at the end of the class, he came and apologized. And that's just for me I mean, I remember that now. That's trauma. It's trauma, and I don't blame him. I think it's ignorance. I think it's ignorance. He didn't know, and that's fine. But I just think it's not a teacher's position to do that.
See, and I mean, you bring up valid points, and you don't forget that type of trauma, because I did it one time in first grade, and I mean, they called me Porky Pig, they laughed, and so, I said, this will never happen again. And so I skipped the first 2 days all through school, in undergrad, in graduate school, in the corporate world, in the military, because I knew I I mean, in my 20s, in my 30s, and this happened at 5 years old. And here I am, 30, 25 years later, and it's a powerful memory. It's a powerful traumatic memory that I am not going to relive. And so that's when I go into go mode. I go into survival mode. Just, I got to do what is best for Pedro, because I know I've been there. I've been there. And so, I mean, you have great advice for parents and teachers, because we're all different. We're all different. I mean, our journeys are different, and what works for you might not work for me. I mean, because
Oh, yeah.
believe me, I mean, I've had contraptions in my ears. I've
Mm.
done voodoo. I mean, that didn't work. Xanax, Zyprexa. I mean, it didn't work. I mean,
Mm-hmm.
and for a lot of people who stutter, they want that magic pill. They want that magic pill. Give it to me. And if that is what you want as your journey, I'm happy for you. I'm happy for you. But for Pedro, I know I've already been there,
Yeah.
and so I know where I am going to now. And the best part, I mean, you bring up such a valid point, because this year I'll be 51. And I'm still learning, Greg. I'm still learning. I started mindful meditation. I read one page out loud every day. I do diaphragmatic breathing. So I mean, but you know, you know, that's my journey. I mean, for another person, you do what you feel you have to do. I support you. I'm happy for you. But for Pedro, I've been there, I've done that, and so I just have to move on with my with my, my daily mindful meditation and book reading out loud. So
Yeah.
okay, let's switch gears a little bit. So job wise, I know we can't prove this in court, although I would love to. But had you ever been discriminated in the job world?
I don't think so. I'm a bit different. I started a company aged 18, and so whilst I have had a couple of job interviews in my time, they were not things I really cared about or needed. So for example, aged 18, I got a job in a bar, for example. But from the age of 18 to now, I'm 37 now. I've always worked for myself, and so I've been on the other side of the table more than on the interviewee side. But the ones I did have, stressful. Yeah, like for me, it's besides doing a presentation as a child. I can do presentations now, but doing a presentation as a child, job interview would be very bad. My stuff is very much around confidence, and I don't want to use the word, but like power in a way. So in my working life, like I said, I started a company with a very good friend of mine when I was 18, so a long time ago. But in work's always been quite easy, especially internally. So when it's with customers, a little bit different, but internally, I'm always the most senior person in the meeting, and I'm technical, so obviously I'm in software, obviously, and so I'm often the most technical in the room as well. So I know my stuff. I wrote the software, so I'm very much in a position of power and control in that. And meetings for me now are a non-event. They're just a non-event. They are what they are. That's fine. But yeah, I certainly, if I didn't have my own company, interviews would be probably the number one issue, I think. And it would almost certainly hold me back. It would, like, the idea of I'm a kind of a believer in changing job every 3 years-ish, because I think for like salary, if you stay at one company for a long time, you get left behind quite often. And so jumping is actually a really good way to get those big salary bumps. And so I would want to do that, but I suspect because of this, I wouldn't. Although the older I've got, it would have become easier, because I'm confident. I'd be confident that I'd go into an interview and be able to talk my stuff, and I know what I'm talking about. And so I think I would have been okay. But yeah, as a youngster, dreadful.
Yeah, it's rough. I mean, job interviews, in general are stressful. However, if you have a stutter, it's like a nightmare. And then if they want you to do a telephone panel interview, forget it. I would just email them, a huge lie. Thank you for the offer, but I have already, accepted another job, which, I mean, huge lie. But again, it goes back to Pedro and survival. So I was like, I mean, there were jobs that were dream jobs. I mean, I wish that, I had them, but, I knew that I can't do telephones, telephone panel job interviews. And so no, I will, I'll just do data entry. So yeah.
Yeah, I think it's affected me the other way. I've interviewed 2 people who stutter. No, sorry, I've interviewed 1 person who stutters, and they didn't get the job. But I think I was more likely to give them the job. I think I have I want to give them a break, right? I want to say, like, hey, look, we can help you. We can work together. We can do this. And actually, I was talking to one of the department managers last week, and he said he interviewed a guy with a very, very bad stutter, and he didn't get the job. And he said it's nothing to do with the stutter. He just didn't have the experience. But I was just thinking, if I was on that interview, I think he would have got the job. I think I would have pushed it and just gone, no, like, he's good. If he clearly wasn't good enough, then no. But I think I have a bit more kind of empathy, a bit more bias towards people with that. Yeah.
See, and my motto is, you want us on your team. We are courageous. We are extremely creative, resourceful, and we are resilient. If you knock us down, guess what? We're getting back up. So, I mean, what I tell everybody, you want us on your team because, I mean, we will work 100 times harder than everybody else because we want to demonstrate we're awesome and we can do this job. And so you really, you you know, you really want us, on your team. And many bosses that I've had have actually written on my performance. I'm so glad I made the choice to hire you. I'm like, oh, that feels great. Validation. Yeah.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah.
So, you know, had you ever had many issues with telephones and restaurants?
Telephones, definitely. Not so much anymore. Depends. Sorry, my camera's just died.
It's
Let
all
me
right.
just fix that. Oh, it's not working. I don't. I can just. It's grayed out. Sorry.
No worries. Just keep on talking.
Carry on. Okay.
Yeah.
So telephones, yeah, as a youngster, absolutely. I mean, I used to. I had a job when I was about 18 at an IT firm, and I used to hear the phone start ringing, and I'd go to the toilet. I would, because it was on like a round robin. So I'd hear like someone else's go first, and I could
Ooh.
see if someone else was going to answer it, and if they weren't, I was straight up and out. I'd also put my phone on Do Not Disturb, and
Yeah.
then if I was questioned about it, I'd be like, oh, I didn't know, oh, I didn't realize, oh, whoops. And it's just kind of what can I get away with? What can
Exactly.
what can I get away with that's not going to hurt me too much, that's not going to cause me too many kind of problems. And so yeah, I absolutely used to do that as a youngster. Nowadays, nowhere near as bad. A new one on me is my daughter's name is Sloane, which, as you can tell, I struggle with
Ooh,
the
that's a
S's a
great
little bit.
name.
Thank you. Which is why we chose it, I think. But we did have a conversation. I did say, "Hey, that's actually quite hard for
The
me to
S,
say."
the letter
Yeah,
S.
and so calling up her kind of nursery or whatever and saying her name, yeah, that's difficult. But like I say, like I've said a few times, it's got easier with age for me, definitely. And I think back to I remember being 16 and having to call those railway inquiries that we talked about earlier, and it was a 1 hour kind of exercise for a 30-second telephone call. I would call, it would ring, I'd hang up. I'd call, it would ring, I'd hang up. Then I'd pluck up the courage, I'd call, they would say hello, I'd start to talk, no, and then eventually I'd get there. And so definitely had stress around that. I mean, no question. It's yeah, very telephone's very, very hard.
Now, because we are in this new normal, this pandemic, global thing, we we now have to communicate via Zoom or Teams or Skype. How have you adjusted? Has it been difficult, or was it an easy transition for you?
So my company has been a fully remote company now for about 8 years. So COVID really had no impact on our work. We've been using Skype and Teams more recently, and Zoom and things for a long time. So it's not had too much of an impact. And I think, again, for me, it's about age. If this came along in my 20s, I think it would have been very different. It came along in my mid 30s, so I was much better equipped handle it. And as I said previously, work has always been quite an easy scenario for me. It's always been a position of power in a way, which is that's one of the biggest factors of my stutter is how confident am I feeling in the moment, and work is definitely a position of confidence.
Now that we have been, in this pandemic for, I think over a year now, this has pushed, people who stutter out of their comfort zones, because before, I think we were doing okay, talking face to face, but now that that has been taken away, and we have to do everything on Zoom or Skype or Teams, we've had to adapt, and in a quick way. And so I hadn't ever done, anything on Zoom, or Teams. So I went to go mode. I called my buddy. I said, Thomas, let's, practice Zoom. So we did it over and over and over again. And that, muscle memory kicked in, rote memory. And when I had to do it, once that light went on, I said, okay, I can do this. However, I disclosed. I would tell everybody, I'm Pedro. I have a stutter. So if I get hung up on any word, give me 8 hours and the word will come out. But if you know what I'm trying to say, help me, help you, help me. And that icebreaker, it worked every time, Greg, every time. And when they would laugh, I know I got them.
Yeah.
They're caring, they're nurturing, they're compassionate, they're professional. So I got this. And so now that I, like what you were talking about, I got the gremlin out of the way. Now I can focus on my presentation.
Yeah.
So if I get hung up, I stop. I hopefully breathe, and then, I carry on. However, I do make it a point to tell them, if you see me freeze, I'm having a block. It is not my internet provider.
Yeah. I think what you're doing there is like I said previously, I think most people are inherently good. I think if someone laughs, I think it's probably quite likely that they are laughing because they don't know what else to do, not because they actually think it's funny. So what you're doing by doing that is you're removing the ambiguity. You are telling them, this is the situation, this is what it is, and so you're like, I think that's probably one of the best things a stutterer can actually do, is to remove the ambiguity, to tell them, hey, this is the situation. You might see this, you might see that. That's how it is, and then unless they're a really, really bad person, they're not going to, at which point you probably don't want to be on a meeting with them anyway, do you? So
yes, that's when you remove them, Greg, and put him in the waiting room.
Exactly.
I have
Precisely.
the power.
Yeah.
Pedro has the power. Oh, that's too funny. All right, sir. So here is a hot topic. So we have a couple of hot topics, but here comes the first one. All right. So do you let others finish your sentences?
So I've got two answers to that. One as a child and one as an adult. Start as an adult. As an adult, I tend to not really block enough where it's a problem too much. I do still have actual full-on blocks which will last between 3 and 5 seconds, something like that. They are relatively rare. And if someone did finish my sentence, I wouldn't say anything. It would annoy me. It would, but it's rare enough that I can let it go. That's fine. As a child, no. I know what I'm saying. And actually, a part of communication is it's giving your story. It's what you're about to say has value, and you want to see the reaction. And actually, stuttering really robs you of that. It robs the punchline. It robs, because often they know what you're going to say before you've said it, and it robs you. And then to have someone else finish it for you is just a real kick in the teeth. It's just that's how I feel. I know you have a different view, but that's how I feel.
Oh, no. You and I are twins. Granted, you're in Australia, and I am here in Texas. We are twins, Greg. Let me tell you, when I was a kid, if they would talk for me when I was having a block, I was enraged.
Mm-hmm.
Because it told me that that I'm broken.
Yeah.
It told me that I have to have another person help me out because I can't get out what I want to get out. So
Mm-hmm.
I would have anger, Greg, like you would not believe. I had ulcers in school from all of the anger because I knew what I wanted to get out, but it could not get out. And these other people would talk for me. And 9 times out of 10, they got it wrong, Greg. They got it wrong, and it made it worse. It was a bigger kick in the teeth.
Yeah. Even if they got it right for me, I would sometimes tell them that they got it wrong. I'd be like, no, I wasn't going to say that.
Yeah. That's a good point, Greg. But now that I'm older, I mean, I'm tired, Greg. I mean, come on,
Yeah.
I'm tired. I mean, you of all people can understand that stuttering is exhausting,
Yeah.
draining. I mean, because every organ in your body is just tense, tense, tense. I'm blocking, I'm repeating, I'm trying to breathe. And so from the time that I wake up until the time that I put my head on that pillow, I am drained. I have nothing for anybody. Don't talk to me. I don't want to talk to nobody. I want to sit in the darkness because ex- I mean, mentally, physically, psychologically, I'm drained. I'm
Yeah.
drained. And I mean, so yeah, it's rough, Greg. Yeah. Yeah. But now that I'm older, if and what I always tell people, it is always appropriate to ask,
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
is it okay if I help you out if you have, you know, if you are having difficulty. So I am more inclined to agree if they're asking me.
Yeah.
However, if I mean, if they're just, you know, blurting it out there and it's incorrect, no, I'm sorry. Game over.
Yeah. 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 Agree. Yeah.
So you were talking about the gremlins. And so can I correlate that to negative self-talk
Um.
or no?
What do you mean by negative self-talk?
Well, when I was growing up, uh, I had to use the telephone. However, that voice in my head would tell me, Pedro, hello, you can't talk because you're stupid. You can't talk because you are slow. You know that you have a form of mental retardation. Don't even think about it. And so that negative self-talk, it followed me for like 35 years.
Mm-hmm.
Um, Had you ever experienced that, negative self-talk? And if you did, how did you deal with it?
Not to the level that you're talking about there. I definitely see my voice, my stutter as a weakness. Definitely, and I still do to this day. I see it as a weakness, which is probably not the healthiest way of dealing with it. But I think I've been able to treat it like that because, as I said, it's got better and better with age, and actually it's there every day, but it's not a stress every day anymore, which is, I mean, I'm really grateful for that, and I know that lots of people don't have that, so I'm aware of that. But yeah, I've never beaten myself up because I kind of know there's nothing I could do about it. It's just the way it is, and I've never got too down, but I've definitely had times of not feeling good, and but they were usually related to a specific event, a presentation, acting in a play, having to say my one line, that kind of thing. So I have not really had proper negative self-talk, but I think bits and pieces, yes.
So I'm curious. You are of a certain age. You are I'm older gentleman. Not that old, because I'm old, but I so have you ever partaken in drinking alcohol, and had you noticed that the alcohol had either helped you or hurt your speech?
So when I went to speech therapy at university, I met, there was about 10 people in the group, and I met lots of other people of varying degrees of stuttering, and it's really surprised me to hear the differences that alcohol has on people. So for me, this isn't scientific, this is anecdotal, but I think I don't really stutter that much at all, really, if I'm drinking. But the hangover, if I'm even slightly hungover, my stutter is immeasurably worse. There's very big correlation there, really kind of a real correlation. If I had a few drinks night before last, not many at all. I stopped drinking at 4 p.m. so I had a long time to kind of recover, and the next day, yesterday, I could very much notice that my stutter was worse. Absolutely. What I've had to give a few presentations in my time. I had to do one at work, which was in front of 140, 150, 160 people, something like that. And then I was the best man at a wedding, so I had to give the best man speech as well. And those two things in my 20s, I would have opted out. I would have said no. But for those two things, I have taken beta blockers, and that, again, like, not. I was very successful in those two speeches. Stuttering wise, it was non-existent, really. I've got recordings, and I mean, I'm sure if any stutterer knows, you kind of watch those back and you listen out, and so there's a couple of very small stumblings in those speeches, but overall nothing. And I don't know if that was to do with the beta blockers or not, but what the beta blockers did do, I mean, are you familiar with them?
Oh, yes, I am, sir. Yes.
Yeah.
Very well.
Yeah. So I think I'm not going to go as far as to say they impacted the stutter directly, but they impacted the nerves. That's what it is. For me at least, everything's calm. Everything's smooth, everything's slow, heart rate's not high. I'm happy. Oh, we're going to do a speech. Okay, cool. Let's go. It's a different experience.
See, and okay, that is where I will have the the opposite. So when I tried them, it made it worse because I focused on it.
Wow. Okay.
I focused on it, telling myself that I am going to be great because I took them. And when I was on stage talking to 200 people, oh no, Greg, oh no, I
Wow.
stumbled, I blocked, and thinking about, hey, weren't you going to help me? I was thinking,
Yeah.
and
Wow.
I mean it, but we're all different. However, I read a book by Mel Robbins. She wrote a book called The 5 Second Rule. What I learned from her book, because I mean, we are still learning. What I learned is I learned to turn anxiety and fear into excitement.
Wow.
It took me some time, but now that they hand me a microphone and I walk on stage, I, I kid you not, Greg, the moment that I walk on the stage, I can't wait. I can't wait to hop on there. When they had me that microphone, it's go time. And
Wow.
so, so, in my head, I have it. I have to. I have to make the, this the best show. Even though I am, presenting, I'm training in my head, I'm doing a show. So when they hand me that microphone, I'm in go mode. And I mean, I am on stage and I'm talking and I'm presenting and, there's my PowerPoint and it's just awesome. And I do have a hiccup every now and then. I will have a block. I will repeat. However, I stop, I breathe, and then I carry on. And at
Mhm.
the end, Greg, to hear that applause, that validation, it's like a drug. It's like I
Yeah.
cannot wait until the next time that I speak, on stage in front of 300 people, 400 people. I can't wait.
Yeah.
You know,
I
I made the
think
switch.
someone told, whilst I was preparing for my best man speech, someone told me something that I kind of haven't, which I think is really useful. And it's not just for best man speeches, it will go for kind of any presentation. People are on your side. They want you to succeed. It's not like, and that's just the fact that they're not sat there hoping that you fail. They're sat there hoping that you succeed, and it's actually, although it's daunting, it's a friendly environment, usually anyway. And I and that
Yes,
kind of
usually.
stuck with me as quite an important piece of advice.
You know, th- you know, that's when I do my icebreaker. And when you hear 200 people laugh, oh, I
Yeah,
got this. I got this.
yeah,
I'm gonna
yeah.
rock it out.
Exactly,
It's all
exactly.
good. Okay, so here is our next hot topic. So when I ask everybody, the answers are split right down the middle. And so I have asked over 100 people all over the world. So let me ask you this, Greg. So when you are alone, can you speak without stuttering?
I've been thinking about this. It's interesting. My my stuff is very much related to stress, right? So I think the answer would be I don't really stutter, but it's also not a guarantee in any way. I could absolutely still um, trip up. I could still stumble. I could still um, do anything. But it's a very low stress environment. So I would say it's one of my better environments. But it's not a guarantee. I can't sit here and go, when I'm on my own, absolutely not, never. Like that's not how it works for me. It's always there. It's always there. It could rear its head up at any moment. I've become extremely good at knowing when I'm going to stutter. I think the older you get, you just naturally pick that up. You understand, I'm going to struggle on this, I'm going to struggle on that. And and so my brain is constantly on a mission to substitute this, or to put a pause in, or to put a conjunctive word in, like an arm, or pretend I'm thinking. And I've got hundreds of little things I do that are actually completely subconscious. And so I don't think it would really, it's not a concrete answer, but it's a low stress environment. Yeah.
Ooh. You bring up a great point. We do a lot of mental gymnastics in our head. I mean, as I am talking to you right now, Greg, there are words that I know that are coming that I will have difficulty with. You know, as I have gotten older, I am more attuned. So as I am talking to you, I can see those words, Greg. I see them. They're coming down the pike. So as I am talking to you in my head at the same time, I am word swapping. So I mean, this mental gymnastics, I mean, it's 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 tiring, Greg.
Um,
It's exhausting.
yeah, absolutely. And it's interesting. I think most people, in my case, most people would fall for my tricks. Most people, like right now, I'm kind of pretending that I'm thinking, but actually I'm not. Most people will fall for my tricks,
I
and
fell for it, Greg.
but
You are
generally, I
so
think
good.
a stutterer wouldn't.
Mm.
I often watch kind of like YouTube videos, just nothing to do with stuttering, but I will pick up on that the host has a very mild stutter and they're navigating around it, and I pick up on it, but I've shown it to other people and they're like, oh, he's just, and I'm like, no, trust me, trust me. So yeah, it's an interesting one.
So has this ever happened to you? You know, let's say you have a doctor's appointment, and you know you walk into the office, and there's a front admin person, and they greet you, you know, and they ask your name, and then you have a block. But I mean, I'm not talking just a regular block. It is a block, and so you know there's a time gap in there, and the admin person ask you, "Did you forget your name?" Has that
Mhm.
ever happened to you, Greg?
As a youngster, yeah. As a adult, not as as an older, like in my 30s, no. In my 20s and teens, yes. For me, I would probably not block with no noise. I'd probably like or something like that. But I've absolutely had people going, oh, did you forget your name? I've always, well, I give them the benefit of the doubt. Like, they just don't know. At the end of the day, how many people walk up to them in their job? Hundreds of people walk up to them every day and ask for what they want. How many of them walk up to them and don't say a word? None. It's whether you like it or not. It's a not a normal situation for that person, and so they react accordingly. They react to what is their normal, and this is not normal. So they're like, "Oh, are you okay?" Like, and I give them the benefit of the doubt. They're not educated in it. They don't understand what's going on, and it's fine. If it happens to me, I laugh it off. I go, oh yeah. Oh, whoops. But I, it's wearing. It's like I say, I'm fortunate that it hasn't happened. It doesn't happen every day, right? It happens rare enough that I can laugh it off, and I appreciate that for some people they can't. It's every day, and it's actually like, kind of, I can imagine if that was me, I would get a bit snappy maybe with them.
Well, let me tell you, Greg, if I had a quarter for every time that happened to me, I would have 20 Range Rovers in my driveway. And the old Pedro, I mean, like you had, you know, just mentioned, the old Pedro would just, you know, you verbally attack
Yeah,
the old Pedro.
yeah,
The right now, what I do is I take that time to educate, because all I have is time. I'm 50, going on 51. All I have is time. And so I will take the time to educate that person. Look, I have a stutter, so I may take a little bit longer than most people. My eyes may close, my arms may go all over the place. I may tap to
Hmm.
help me get the word out. It's just me. It's just what I have. And so that way, for the next time they encounter another person who may have a stutter, they will be b- better equipped. My motto is if you know better, you do better. And
Yeah,
so right now, for me, it's all about r- r- raising awareness and education, because I mean, you had said it previously, it's ignorance. They don't know. So we are here to help them, to, educate them. And so that way, it won't happen to the next person. So yeah.
absolutely. And not like it's rare enough. So I think the stats are that 1% of the population have a persistent stutter. So that's a lot of people. But what you've got to remember is that most of those are trying to hide it. Do you know what I mean? Most of them are hiding it. Most of them don't want you to know, and some of them do, and that's fantastic. But most of them don't. Most of them are ashamed. Most of them are covering it up. So actually, if 1% of the people do have a stutter, it's definitely 1% of people. It's definitely less than 1% that person has kind of seen and experienced. Like a person with a stutter might send their friend in, might not go in, might get their parents to go in, might just, there's all kinds of techniques. So although 1% is actually quite common, that's not the reality that person behind the desk would actually experience.
Yeah. So here is a deep question. So do you consider stuttering as a disability?
I've thought about this a bit, and I'm kind of a bit. My answer is yes. Yes, I do. And I struggle to see how anyone could say no. Whether you accept it or not, it's still there. It's still a hindrance to you. And I understand that people have overcome maybe the mental barriers that I haven't, and they accept it. And some people will say that they love it and it's a part of the. And I think that's great. I think that's healthy. I think if that's that person's way of dealing with it, that's fine. But I think the underlying truth is that it is still a disability. Like if you gave, there will be some people that would not agree with this, but I think if you gave most people a chance to redo life and gave them the chance to not stutter, I think the vast majority would take that chance. I think they would say, yeah, redo it, but without that, I think. And I get that stuttering's not the worst thing in the world. There are diseases and conditions and things that are much more debilitating. But I do, I do. I think it's a disability, and that's the route I'm taking with my daughter. I will try to put her through therapy, and I will try everything I can for her to have a life without it. That's my aim. If that's not successful, fine. We will survive. We will cope. We will then go down that route. We will accept ourselves. We will, and hopefully I'm a good role model for her. And that's great. But whilst there's a chance to kind of remove it, I will take that chance.
Did you ever think that your stutter might hinder your career path?
If I didn't work for myself, I would say yes. I think there's a chance it would have, because I work for myself, I definitely did things differently at work. Like I said before, I started the business with a friend of mine at the time, and he did all the customer facing meetings and things. I would go when it was necessary for me to go, but we knew our place. Like I was the technical person, and I mean, he's also technical, but he was good in front of the customer, and I would shy away from that. Oh, we're going to go to this exhibition and put up a stand, and I was like, oh Jesus, people coming over. Like I mean, I did what I had to do, but it definitely, I definitely would shy away from things. But also on the flip side, I would definitely sometimes grab the bull by the horns. Like it's all about how confident I'm feeling at that moment in time. And I don't actually know how confident I'm often feeling until I'm asked to do something, right? And that's even to this day. I can be having a perfectly normal day. I'm not thinking about stuttering or da-da-da. Me and my partner go to a restaurant or whatever, and one of us needs to speak to the waiter. And in that moment, I'm either like, yep, I'll do it, boom. Or I'm like, I don't want to do it. And I have no way of knowing what it's going to be. And it can be either. And also, I don't want to, that's a bit awkward for me. I don't want to tell my partner that's how I'm feeling, right? So I'll just be like, I'll either just kind of not talk or like pretend I'm looking at the menu or something like that, so that she kind of has to do it. Or I'll ask her, oh, can you do it? And she gets that subtle message now. She understands what's going on if I say, can you do it? But I also think that's a crutch, because if I was on my own, I would do it. If I was on my own, regardless of how I'm feeling, I would do it, because who am I going to ask? But when there's an out, sometimes I'll take it.
Yeah. Restaurants, I just tell the waiter, I will tip you huge, just be patient. And after it's all done, once I tip him or her and their eyes get big, I said, no, I appreciate you. I appreciate you because you gave me time. You gave me time. And for that, I appreciate you. And here is a very large tip. So me, I use money as a leverage at restaurants. I'm older. It's all good.
It's a good lever.
Yes. Works for Pedro. All right. So here is another hot topic. So let's talk about dating. Now, dating is stressful for everybody. However, if you have a stutter, it's like a million times more difficult. How did you handle dating with having a stutter?
It was definitely on my mind during any date of any kind. It was definitely on my mind. My stutters, like I said before, it's related to confidence. One-on-one, I'm quite confident. Confidence drops in groups, especially competitive talking environments. If people are talking over each other, I'm getting interrupted. It's hard. It's really, really hard. I'm not a competitive, like in a competitive speaking scenario, I will just not talk. It's just not worth it. But one-on-one, I've always, even as a youngster, I've always been confident enough that I'm aware of it. I'm thinking about it whilst I'm on the date or the meeting or whatever, but it's not much of an issue to the point where I would have to like disclose. I asked my partner last night if I disclosed, and neither of us can remember, but we think not. So I was obviously confident enough to feel like, hey, I can maybe get away with this. So yeah, dating wasn't terrible, just because it was that one-on-one environment.
Well, thankfully I skipped dating altogether. My BFF, it was her goal to find me somebody, because she knew that I was destined to be alone. Nobody wants to hang around the person who can't talk. And so she made it her life's mission to say, no, I am going to find you somebody. And so she scheduled a blind date. And I mean, it was at a Spanish restaurant, Tex-Mex, in Corpus Christi, Texas, February 19th, 1995. And I mean, Greg, I kid you not, Greg, the moment I opened the door and the eyes locked, that was it. That was it. And this year we have celebrated 26 years, Greg. 26 years.
Congratulations.
Thank you. The heart doesn't care if you have a stutter. The heart don't care if you're bow-legged, if you have buck teeth. The heart doesn't care. And so if you have that one person who loves you for you, I mean, that's what life's all about. I mean, so
You're very lucky.
It's all good, sir. It's all good. It's hard work, though. It's hard work. I mean,
yeah.
There were days, do I have enough to cover for murder? No, I'm just kidding. I'm kidding. Okay. Let's move on, Greg. All right. So, okay. You are a techie guy. So, this is right up your alley. So what do you think about all this new technology? You have Google Home, you have Alexa, and then you have the one for Apple. Those S's. Do you think that all this new technology is helpful or hurtful for people who stutter?
I think it's individual. My whole house is Alexa. Everything's Alexa. I chose that because it's the easiest one for me to say, frankly. The lights are all Alexa. Everything is, yeah. And I think it is helpful, like when you start thinking about like ordering meals, like Uber Eats, Deliveroo, ordering taxis, Uber, whatever you've got in the States. I don't know, but I think it is helpful. I think it's a double-edged sword. I think that the technology definitely allows shortcuts, and they're convenience shortcuts, but a lot of them just happen to not require speech, which is kind of a win for us. But I also think it facilitates more conversation. So 50 years ago, we would not be having this conversation. I wouldn't know about you. I wouldn't know who you were, and I wouldn't be talking to you. We live probably 15,000 miles away. We wouldn't be talking. And the same goes in work, in business, in just everything. There's many, many, many more conversations happening right now because of technology. So it facilitates more conversations. You meet people online, you then talk. It facilitates those conversations. So I don't think there's an answer. I think it's yes and no, and it depends on your personal situation. I mean, I know people who absolutely detest voice assistants, people who stutter and people who don't, because some people who stutter, it just doesn't understand them in any way. It just goes like, sorry, I don't know what you're talking about. And then I also know people who don't stutter, who think it's just, why would I talk to a computer in my house and ask it what the weather's like? Which I also get. It's a personal thing, and if you can find things that help you, great. I don't use the Siri one for the exact same reason as you. Like it's even when I'm on my own, which goes back to one of your questions earlier, like I would struggle with that, and so no, I don't use that. But the Alexa one, which I've had to mute because I've had to turn off its microphone because I'm saying the magic word. So yeah, so I think it's a double-edged sword.
Over 100 people that I have spoken to, they tell me, that half don't like it, and the other half, they use it as a means to practice, because it's not a human, and so they can practice and practice, and practice. My big issue is that they don't give you enough time to respond. I need at
Yeah.
least 8 minutes to just breathe. And if should ask, either of those a question, or whatnot, they only give you like 1 or 2 s- 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 seconds to respond. And I'm just, about to breathe. And
Yeah.
yeah, I can't hear that, or, I don't understand. Or,
And I don't
yeah.
think I don't think there's a solution there, like because
Well,
it can't see you.
right,
So
right. But I have some good news, Greg, and you will extremely appreciate this. I have been a part of 2 collegiate studies, and so th- these 2 colleges are creating an AI algorithm to help with Google, Alexa, and the other one. And so they are like halfway done to help us
oh
handle
wow,
that. So I think
wow,
that's wonderful. It's wonderful.
yeah. Well, I mean, technology to the rescue.
Yes, 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 yes. Okay, so what is a challenge speech wise that you had to overcome, and how did you do it?
I think the biggest challenge in recent years was the best man speech that I did. I think I kind of had a suspicion that the groom would ask me, and I was kind of thinking like, oh, what do I? Okay. And so he asked me, and he was very good when he asked me. He was like, look, I get if you don't want to do it, it's fine. But I was probably 34 at the time, and kind of quite similar to I am now, like fairly confident. And I said, no, I'll make it work. Like whatever it is, I'll make it work. And I did make it work, and it went very, very well. And I'm very lucky that it did. And yeah, I did take those beta blockers though. That's one thing. And I think for me, those would, if I was like interviewing for a job, I would absolutely take them, 100%. If I had to do another big presentation, I would absolutely take them. For me, I don't really know if they actually directly impact the stuttering, but they do impact the anxiety, and that's a big piece for me. So yeah, that's probably the biggest challenge in recent years that I've overcome. I mean, besides school, kind of doing presentations and things, and I mean, I would always rack my brains to get out of those anyway. So whatever it was, I would come up with something. Um, so yeah,
As we all do.
yeah,
It's called survival mode.
exactly.
So you had talked about this briefly, but let me just formally ask you this to hear your whole statement. So, so do you think it's okay to stutter, or do you think it is important to keep chasing the fu- the the fluency gods?
Good question. Um, I think I think it's individual again, but I think it's also a big component is age. Um, for me at my age, I'm not going to put lots of time and effort into uh, increasing my fluency. It's absolutely okay to stutter, and I do understand that there are people more fluent than me, and there are people less fluent than me. But I've got it okay, as like I'm quite lucky, I think. But I think as a child, like I said before, I think your brain is still forming, and it's still much more plastic, and there's so much more hope to actually get persistent improvements. there's research on the Lidcombe program that we talked about previously that shows that in a lot of other treatments, there's quite a big kind of I can't think of the word, but quite a big kind of regression. So they will go through the treatments and they'll get to a level of fluency, but then if you check back in 7 years, it's kind of deteriorated. Whereas in the Lidcombe, it doesn't deteriorate as much, if at all. Obviously, everyone's different. So I think as a youngster, I think as long as the child is keen and wants to, I think working on that is absolutely a good thing. And it also depends how severe your stutter is. I haven't felt I really need to work on things every single day because I do have thick skin and I'm not too bad these days. But the question is to myself is that if I allowed myself to go into speech therapy, which as we heard before I did not, would it be different? I don't know. Would it? That's the question I'll never know. And maybe it is a solvable or a largely solvable problem if treated at the right age. I mean, that is what the research shows. I mean, it just is. And so I think it's important to try that if possible.
What has your stutter taught you?
A lot of people, I've heard a fair few of your interviews, and a lot of people here will say, empathy it's made me the person I am today, and I'm very happy about kind of all that kind of stuff. And I take a slightly different approach. I think it's given me empathy towards other people who stutter, but I don't think it's changed my baseline level of empathy with people. I don't. I think I would have been as empathetic or as sympathetic as I am, regardless of that. I do think it's changed my sympathy or empathy towards people who stutter. I think that's absolutely a given. If I hear someone stuttering, I can relate. I feel it. I know a bit of their life. I know what this is. I know how you're feeling. I've been there, and how can I help? I think that's what it's given me. I think that's what it's taught me. This is probably quite unpopular, but I really see my stutter as a big negative. I see it. Besides that, I think it's given me nothing. I think it's taken away from me. I think it's held me back in ways. I think it's I don't have much positive to say about it. And for those people that do, like I really kind of pat them on the back. I say congratulations. You've achieved more. You've achieved more than I have. And yeah, I think part of me feeling that way is that my stutter's not terrible. If it was terrible, I think a much better route is to make peace, is to be happy, and that's how it is. But I definitely have quite negative views towards it, which maybe if you speak to me in 10 years time, I'll have a different story. Maybe I'll say, no, yeah, I love it. It's me. It's molded me, and maybe I will have grown a little bit in that time. But for right now, and certainly younger me, no, I don't think it's taught me anything.
Well, Greg, I will put you on my calendar 10 years from now. All right.
Thank you.
It's what I do. And so, I mean, we're all different. And so many people that I talk to, locally, you know, um, you know, or a, young man in Pakistan or Germany or Brazil, they tell me that, many people on my podcast have, told me that their stutter is either a blessing or, a curse, and many people have told me that it has been a curse, because it has brought up, walls. I mean,
Yeah.
I mean, l- limiting all facets of their life. And then you have the mother half that have told me that, it is a blessing.
Mhm.
Um, Coming from my background, um, with having it for 45 years, I mean, I know where I have been. And growing up, I thought I was the only one, Greg. I thought I was
Mhm.
the
Mhm.
only person who had this. I did not meet another person who stuttered until I was in my 20s. My
Wow.
20s. And how it happened was I was on the street. I greeted this young man and we shook hands, but no words came out.
Wow.
And
Mm.
I could see it in his eyes, Greg. I could see it in his eyes. He wanted to greet me, but he couldn't. Heck,
Yeah.
I wanted to greet him, but I couldn't. However, these two words came out minutes later. I told him, I know.
Mhm.
I know. And oh my, Greg, he had tears and I had tears because the nonverbals, I mean, I could tell he was in pain.
Yeah.
I could tell he
Yeah.
had that anguish and everything that comes with it. And after I told him, I know, everything just kind of dropped. Everything just
Mhm.
kind of dropped. And I mean, it's just, and later in life, my stutter has taught me who people really are. It shows me their personality.
Yeah.
Um, it lets me know who is worthy of my time. Because Greg, I mean, I will tell you, Greg, I'm going to be honest with you. In talking to many people, and I had a block, a severe block, and my eyes would close. After I got it out and my eyes had reopened, the other person was gone.
Wow.
Gone.
Wow. Wow.
And that had told me they are not worthy of my time.
Mhm. Mhm.
They are not worthy of my time. And there are, I mean, there are there are people out there, Greg, and I mean, it's ignorance. They don't know.
Exactly.
We have our role and they have their role in a two-way conversation. So what I want uh, from you, I want your patience. I want your respect. I want your eye contact. I want your compassion. That's all that I want. And if you can't give me that, then I don't need you in my circle. That's it.
Exactly. I think um I think the fact that the first time you met another person who stuttered was when you were in your 20s. I think that's just a real kind of a testament to what you're doing right now. I think what you're doing right now is with this podcast and everything you do, just that raising of awareness is, I think it's exactly what's required. I think it's a really honorable thing to be doing, and I really congratulate you on the route that you're taking. It's like I'm sure you've been told this, but it's very therapeutic to listen to other people's troubles, and it is that you're not alone. I know it's not like it was 30 years ago. I was already aware that I'm not alone, but to actually hear things and go, hey, that's exactly what I do. Yeah, it's very, very. therapeutic. It's like an informal therapy, I think.
And you know, thank you for that compliment. And I believe in in my heart of hearts is that there's healing in sharing. Knowing that other people around the globe, because I'm just here in Texas. I mean, it's just Pedro in Texas, and here I am talking to an awesome person in Australia. I mean, I'm talking to Greg, who's hashtag awesome. I mean, it doesn't get any better than this because we are helping a person in Brazil or in Germany. And to me, that's what this is all about. My goal is to just show the world how awesome that we are and that you want us on your team. You got to have us on your team. you know that we can do anything because we have a light. I truly believe this because growing up, I had the darkness because I was alone. No one wanted to hang around the kid who couldn't talk. I ate lunch in the janitor's closet all through school,
Wow.
all by myself. And so when I walk, through you know, a grocery store and the odor of bleach, and Comet, and I mean, it brings me back. It brings me back
Wow.
to me
Wow.
holding a tray. I'm not uh not gonna cry, Greg, but holding a school tray in the 3rd grade, having lunch in the janitor's closet. I mean, it's so to have us here and tell the whole world that, hey, I have the same hurdles, obstacles, and challenges. However, we are talking about it. We are telling the whole world, and that's what, this is all about.
Agreed.
Okay, so what advice would you give to another person who stutters?
There is no template. There is no template for a person who stutters. It's your journey and it's a personal journey. Again, it would be age. If I met a parent who's got a toddler who's just started stuttering, I would say to go look at the treatments that I'm embarking on. If I met an adult, we could talk about it. I don't think I'd have particular advice because my advice, things that work for me, may not work for others. We can talk about it, and if there's common ground, yeah, we can share. But I think it's just stick with it. I think the technology, just going back a few steps, the technology, one of the side effects of that is it raises awareness. This podcast, other podcasts, TED Talks, you name it, it raises awareness. And so I think things are only going to get better. Like, not in terms of a cure, but just in terms of just everyday experience for people who stutter. I think in the 1800s it was worse than it was in the 1900s, which is worse than it was in the 2000s, which is where I just think it's just always getting better. That's not to diminish anyone's experience. It's not fun for anybody, and I understand that, but I do think it's getting easier with more awareness. I think teachers are more aware, parents are more aware. There's actual science being done behind it. These things have names. It's not just the R word. They actually have names. They have very, very detailed explanations of what's going on in the brain. They have computer models that can reliably simulate stuttering just by slowing down or speeding up different areas of the brains. It's amazing. So I think it is getting easier, but I think there's not much advice I could give besides kind of you're not alone.
So if you had an opportunity to be on the world stage and tell the world, give the world some insight about stuttering, what message would you convey?
It would be a plea for awareness, compassion, and understanding. It's like any issue, any kind of disability, I guess, I think awareness is the big piece of that. The more people that are aware, just the more understanding there is. Like I said before, I think there's very, very few people that are actually laughing. Do you know what I mean? That actually think, oh, that's really funny. Like, I don't think that's that. I'm not saying it's impossible. I'm sure there are, and obviously more common in children. I understand that. But as an adult, I think it's much more about ignorance. So the awareness side of it is probably the most important. I would feel. I'd like to give some insight as well. I don't think it's possible. I really don't think it's possible to actually explain to someone what it's actually like when you're blocking. I read a Reddit post the other day from a speech language therapist who said that their professor or teacher, or I don't know what it would be, was asking them to kind of pretend stutter themselves, to kind of go
Ooh,
and
yes, I read that.
and my view on that was, and I actually commented, my view on that was like, I can pretend stutter too. It feels nothing like stuttering. It feels nothing like it. You cannot get that experience. It's like, it's not the same. It's just not. And what the person wrote in the post was like, oh, it's to understand the muscle movements. No, when you're pretending to stutter, you are making your muscle movements. When you're blocking, they are involuntary. You are trying to make muscle movements and they're not happening. That post wound me up a little bit, actually. I was kind of like, that it's just, I don't feel it's helpful.
That also wound me up, and so if you scroll all the way down, you will see my comment. Yeah, because like, no, I'm sorry, no, you can't. No, I'm sorry. I mean, they have no idea what we go through. So no, I'm sorry. That's not
Yeah.
gonna work.
We're on the same page.
Yes, sir. We are twins, Greg. We're twins. I'm just your Texas twin. That's all. It's all good. All right, sir. Well, Greg, we've had a great conversation. I want to thank you for sharing your story and your your daughters. I think you are a wonderful father. I mean, just fantastic, to help your child however that you can. I mean, um, this journey, it's tough, but if if you have people around you, who love you and support you, um, it makes it, just a little bit easier. And um, and for her to have you in her corner, oh, is wonderful. It's wonderful. And so,
Thank you.
I want to just, thank you for sharing your story, because, like I said previously, there's healing in sh- in sharing, and so, you know th- you know this will help a lot of people around the world. And I have the best listeners. I mean, they're just hashtag awesome. I mean, I'm in 58 countries on 6 continents. I'm trying to reach that one person in Antarctica. So if you know anybody, please, I want to be on all continents. But how can my listeners reach out to you if they want to make contact?
So the only real way is Twitter. I deleted Facebook, and I'm not on Instagram, so it's Twitter. So it's just at Greg Pakes on Twitter.
Okay. We will have that link in the podcast notes. So I want to just, thank you again. I mean, you are #awesome, and you are, your daughter is blessed to have you, and your wife, your partner, to help her in this journey. So I want to just thank you again, and so down the road, I will put on my calendar, 10 years from today, and so that way I can have you on again, sir. All right.
Well, thank you for having me, and thank you for listening, and thank you for your podcast.
Thank you, sir. I hope you have a great day. Take care, be well, and stay safe.
Thank you.
If you like this podcast, head on over to Apple Podcasts. Subscribe, rate, and review. Thank you for listening, and we will talk again.